Chairman, sir, I know that at this stage, not much play is left. Not much room for maneuver can be sought. And the finance minister has played all his cards out. I think in the spirit of trying to make some constructive suggestions, which may be of some relevance to the Ministry of Finance, in further fine-tuning their policies in the course of the next 3 months, as we move towards seeing the contours of a new budget by a new government, let me make a few observations, sir. I'll make 5 observations. The first relates to macro asymmetry. I do not want to go into the issues of a policy of fiscal profligacy, because I think this has been dwelt with by other speakers. But I do wish to say that clearly conventional economics has been turned upside down. Suddenly, fiscal profligacy, high current account deficit, sowing seeds of incipient inflation are not dirty words anymore. While you quite understand that exceptional situations demand exceptional actions, and that if you take off-budget items into account, the fiscal deficit this year, by their own government's own admission, if you reckon with the off-budget items, will clearly be in the region of 12 to 13%. That incipient seeds have been sown for inflationary pressures to build up, even though inflation may not be currently a worry, sir. And that, therefore, we need to make sure of whether the finance ministry has any part of returning to reasonableness in combining the need to stimulate the economy along with returning to the path of some degree of fiscal responsibility. I also agree that considering the large borrowings which fiscal 1, stimulus, fiscal 2, and now fiscal 3 entails, these large borrowings will to some extent again push up the cost of borrowing, will to mop up the kind of liquidity which has been eased up by a reduction of the CRR and SLR, reduction of reverse and reverse repo. So I think that the need to now reconsider how these large borrowings are to be accommodated along with the objective of continued credit availability on costs which are affordable. And on affordability of costs, sir, I agree with that old maxim that you can take a horse to water, you cannot make it drink. You have improved the liquidity of the banks, but bank lending remains frozen, and cost of lending is unduly influenced by risk perceptions on what the risk of further lending is. So how does the Ministry of Finance intend to manage these macro asymmetries? Returning to the path of some degree of fiscal rectitude, ensuring that the increased availability of liquidity is made available to the actual consumers and benefit, that cost of credit is really reduced, that access to external flows are really something which can be accelerated, and that further, that the overall management of the balance of payments is something which is consistent with the framework of macroeconomic stability. These are not easy asymmetries to reconcile, and this represents really a serious macroeconomic challenge for the Ministry of Finance, even in the very short run. My second point is that since the Ministry of Finance has in yesterday's presentation, the Finance Minister has given the states a 0.5% leeway in terms of the kind of excess which they can do under the Fiscal Responsibilities Act. I do believe that right now the ability of states to make quick disbursements is far greater than the ability of the central government. And that therefore the headroom for the states to undertake this kind of a quick change in expenditure patterns, create gainful employment, undertake economic activity is significantly higher than what it is with the central government. And therefore this 0.5% should be increased to 1% of the GDP under the States Fiscal Responsibility Act. But further, sir, that in terms of the fact that the states have been burdened with the 6th Finance Commission, that the 40,000 giveaway on revenues which fiscal stimulus 1 and 2 you did, and another 30,000 crores which you did, this 70,000 crores of giveaways and other kind of decline in revenue buoyancy would significantly reduce the kind of taxes which are available to the states will put further pressure on state governments in trying to meet the fiscal responsibility target. So I do believe my second suggestion is to encourage state-level fiscal stimulus package by accommodating the states which are in a better position to be able to quickly utilize funds, to have quicker disbursements, and to create more, in a shorter period of time, gainful circles of higher employment, higher economic activity, and higher job creation. And that there should be no politics being played in the devolution of these funds. I'd per se like to mention the fact that many state government proposals are remaining mired in the bureaucracy of different ministries. I would refer, for instance, the fact that the two ambitious packages which were given for rehabilitation of the flood-affected victims of Bihar from the ravages of this year's Kosi flood from last year, which many of my colleagues have alluded to in an earlier part of the discussion, that's something which can be revisited, that's something which can give immediate relief, that's something which can create immediate gainful employment. My third point really, sir, is, so my first point, which was about macro stability, really if carried to its logical thing, would imply a further reduction in repo rates, reverse repo rates, CRR, SLR, signaling the banks for a reduction of interest rates. My second point, sir, related to a state-level fiscal stimulus package which can really assist the Ministry of Finance in creating the kind of gainful circles. My third important point, sir, is, and to question how relevant is the fiscal stimulus for a country and an economy like ours. And I'd like to just allude to the fact, sir, that from the data which have been provided to us in reply to various questions in the Rajya Sabha, over 400,000 crores are locked up in public outlay projects. Out of 909 infrastructure projects worth 418,000 crores, 346 projects are running behind time. There are serious cost and time overruns relating to 35,000 crores. That it's a telling story that in the central sector alone, out of 516 central sector projects, 207 projects are really running behind time. That in NHDP 1, only 49% of the laning has been completed. NHDP 2, 51%. NHDP 3, only 9% of the BOT contracts have been given. I can go on, sir. But similar is the story of what is happening on the Indira Vikas Yojana and some of the other related things. I can go on, sir, to allude to the fact that under the Jawaharlal Urban Renewal Mission, only less than 50% of the money allocated has been spent so far. My basic point really, sir, is that clearly the absorptive capacity of the economy to be able to absorb large doses of public outlays is shrinking since large value projects are running behind schedule. So what should the Ministry of Finance do under these circumstances? Well, I think they can do several things. First, the least I would have expected from the Ministry of Finance and from the Finance Minister in his budget speech was that to come up with some proposals which can speed up project implementation, to utilize the money which is already embedded in the system. Second, to be able to simplify disbursement procedures by working out with the CNAG some way in which for the next 3 months or for the next 1 year, you simplify processes, you simplify procedures in which the money which is already locked into the system can begin to have its gainful multiplier effect on the economy. So I think the value of any stimulus is how quickly and how gainfully we can utilize the money which is locked in. My fourth point really, sir, is that a combination of monetary and fiscal policy would need sectoral policy adjustments. If you want to really begin to kickstart the economy, then certain sectors deserve special packages. Allusion has been made to what has been done for exports. We should have a special package for exports, special package for housing, special package for sector-specific packages is something which the Ministry of Finance can consider even in the course of the next 3 months. My final point, sir, is that global outlook continues to remain uncertain. The future expectations remain very bleak. There are no definite estimates of when we expect an upturn of the global economy. And to the extent that we are somewhat integrated with the global economy, and even if we wish to really begin to decouple ourselves, although decoupling is a fallacy, if we begin to decoupling ourselves, it will mean that consumption in this country will need to be boosted very significantly, and whether it can be done in terms of a slow economy with slow per capita income and slow growth of the overall GDP is something which is questionable. Nonetheless, sir, we need to move beyond monetary and fiscal policy to undertake some consideration of structural policies in relation to the agriculture sector. Agriculture has been, sir, if you recall, we have talked about it in rhetoric, but the genuine truth is that agricultural reforms still remain stalled. How to create manufacturing hubs, really, which can create gainful circles of employment. The example which West Bengal has raises a more important issue of how to have a credible policy on R&R, which can have a different kind of land utilization, which can genuinely foster manufacturing hubs, the kind of other laws with which we are embedded, the urbanization laws, the laws relating to labor. In the long run, sir, if you want to stimulate consumption, we'll have to look to some of these areas in which we have neglected action, and on which I realize that nothing dramatic can happen in the next 3 months, but since governments come and go, the economy is a continuum. Governments which really fail to act in time cannot pull rabbits out of the hat in times of crisis. Nonetheless, even governments like this, looking at the continuity of action, can take into consideration the 4 or 5 practical steps which I have brought before you, sir, and which I have mentioned for the Finance Minister's consideration, where I do believe that even in the last few months in the run-up to the election, we can give some impetus and some start flagging growth momentum and the steep decline which we are perceiving in multiple directions. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, N.K. Singh. Very concrete and specific.